Hello and welcome to our midday webinar. Today, Thrive London bring you a pan-London discussion on faith and resilience in partnership with Faith Forum for London and the Mayor of London. My name is Jeeves Rahilla. I'm the London Regional Coordinator at Faith Forum for London, Strengthening Faith Institutions, and chair the Faith United Youth Network. I will be chairing the event today. I'm extremely excited to hear from our speakers and the work that they've been doing to help those affected by COVID-19. But before we do hear from our guests, I'd like to say a few words, particularly highlighting the vast support places of worship and faith communities have given to those that have been impacted by this global pandemic. Faith communities have really stepped up to provide material, emotional, spiritual, and pastoral care and support, not only to their own congregants, but the wider community that surrounds them. In my role at Faith Forum for London, it's been an honour to work with certain faith groups and organisations that feel a sense of responsibility to help those impacted by the virus. The short and long-term effects of this virus have and will not only impact the physical health of individuals, but the mental health also. Mental health is often easy to forget and even easier to neglect, but we must remember that a huge part of managing our fitness and well-being is dependent on caring for our own mental health. Myself, as a youth, a young person, finding their way through a world that is extremely uncertain at this present moment, can be challenging. It can spark anxiety, depression, and a real lack of hope for my future. But we must always remember that the future is in our control, not always through the circumstances that we find ourselves in, but our mindset whilst confronted with challenging circumstances. The news and social media can often be dominated by negativity. Today, in contrast, we hope to leave you with a positive message of solidarity, hope, and resilience. Though we are facing a collective struggle, with the help of our amazing doctors, key workers, nurses, pharmacists, of which my mother is one, and faith leaders and organisations, we can get through it. There is always light at the end of the tunnel, and we will walk socially distanced together to get to the end. This pandemic has again taught us a valuable lesson, the same guiding principle that I seek to encompass within the organisation that I run, Faith United Youth Network, that issues of societal concern are more effectively solved when we work together. At FUYN, our core belief and guiding principle remains that a collective and unified response between all faith groups is the best way we can construct inclusive and effective solutions to every issue of concern. Within today's discussion, we will explore the role of faith leaders and faith-based organisations in supporting communities impacted by COVID-19, taking a particular focus on resilience. Resilience is an interesting concept. Resilience does exist as an individual personal characteristic. However, I believe it is strongest and most effective when groups, both of faith and non-faith, exhibit resilience as a community, not as an individual, but as a group that support one another. Now, before I introduce Byron, who will read some words from the Mayor of London, I'm going to outline the objectives of this webinar, both of which I've already touched upon, to share experiences and examples of how faith and belief-based organisations and groups have supported their communities during the pandemic and in the recovery phase and beyond, and also to share examples of what faith and belief groups can do going forward to support the mental health and well-being of those they serve. I hope we can fulfill both of those objectives for you today. So now, without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing Byron Johnson, who will give us an overview of Thrive London and a message from the Mayor of London. Over to you, Byron.
Thank you very much, Jeeves, and a warm welcome to everyone who has joined us this afternoon. My name is Byron Johnson Brown, and I'm really excited about what we are going to hear from faith and belief practitioners this afternoon. But before I get into that, I'd like to read a quick message from our Mayor, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London. COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on our city. It's claimed thousands of lives, left families and loved ones bereaved and heartbroken, and forced major changes to the way we all live and work. The economic fallout from the virus is also creating huge uncertainty, with people worried about their jobs and anxious about their futures. It's only natural then that many Londoners should find themselves struggling with their mental health right now. After all, None of us are superhuman. I therefore want to express my deep gratitude to Thrive London and the Faith Forum for London, not only for organising this event today, but for the invaluable work you're doing helping Londoners cope with the mental toll of this pandemic. Faith groups, mental health professionals, charities, and voluntary organisations all have a crucial role to play in supporting our communities and helping those Londoners who are going through a difficult period. By encouraging people to open up about their feelings, seek help when it's needed, and support one another, you are making a real difference, and we are truly indebted to you for your efforts. So, as the Mayor of London and on behalf of our city, I want to say a big thank you. I hope you all have a positive and productive event. I really appreciate that message from Sadiq, and now I will take you through a few slides to explain a bit about Thrive London, what we do and why we do it, and following that I will pass you back to Jeeves. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Glyn. Thrive London towards healthier lives. My name is Byron Johnson Brown, and Thrive London is a partnership organisation bringing together Public Health England, NHS England, London Region, London Councils, and it is supported by the Mayor of London. Next slide, please, Glyn. Okay, so who am I and why am I speaking to you today? So I have a lifetime of lived experience managing a long-term condition and over a decade of professional experience in the health system. My vision for a more personalised and equitable health service has been heavily influenced by my personal experience and early career in health justice and epidemiological research. Most recently, I've succeeded as part of a partnership team to develop London's next step for social prescribing, and this was published last year in October. I currently advise on digital transformation and manage relationships for Healthy London Partnership Social Investment Fund. I have a keen interest in the future economics of genomics and population health. My background educationally is in entrepreneurship and media management, and I'm currently completing my MSc in healthcare leadership at the University of Birmingham. If you go to the next slide, please, Glenn. So what is Thrive London? In July 2017, the Mayor of London, alongside health and care partners, launched Thrive London with the aim of creating the collective action needed across London for everyone to speak openly about mental health and have an equal opportunity to thrive. At its core, Thrive London is a participation-driven partnership that engages with and responds to the needs and insights of Londoners. By working in partnership across London, we are better able to achieve our shared goal for all Londoners to have an equal chance to a healthy, happy, and fulfilling life. We've grown rapidly since our public launch in 2017, becoming a complex collection of partnerships, projects, and activities. Many have come about due to our open approach to participation and partnerships. And for COVID-19, Thrive London has been asked to coordinate the public health mental response on behalf of Public Health England Office for London. Next slide, please, Glenn. So what is our approach? Our approach is informed by social movement theory, and our strategy is to effectively advance social change through a blend of bottom-up and top-down approaches. And to do this, we have 4 enablers: participation, partnerships, proportionate universalism, and leadership. Participation is the driving force of Thrive London, and partnerships are the firm foundation from which we can build sustained collective action. Although mental health affects everyone, it doesn't do so equally. And for leadership, distributed multi-level leadership with a degree of autonomy is important. Thrive London requires ongoing leadership from the Mayor of London and London Health Board partners to succeed. Next slide, please, Glenn. So coordinating the public mental health response in London for COVID. This slide here shows our Act On podcast series, which is available on SoundCloud, Spotify, or Apple. And we've worked closely with groups of young Londoners to develop and record this podcast series. I would highly recommend listening at your leisure, especially around health equity and Black Lives Matters, to understand the challenges facing our youth today. Next slide, please, Glenn. Emerging resources. Not only just today, but also Thrive London has been supporting a developing series of NHS-led mental wellbeing webinars, both for the general public and for healthcare workers. The Coping Well During COVID and Keeping Well for Health and Care Workers webinar series are developed and delivered by Healthy London Partnership's Adult Mental Health Programme. The webinars are recorded and they are all available on Thrive London's website. Next slide, please, Glenn. Community participation. Community participation is absolutely key to me. I think it's so important. I think we need more. And we have developed a draft population mental health active monitoring framework for Public Health England and a strategic coordination group. This framework outlines limitations with available sources of information and makes recommendations to address those limitations. One of the recommendations is around how we could improve the representativeness and inclusiveness of information and add more granularity to data sets to improve understanding of specific issues affecting different communities, particularly those who are vulnerable or marginalised. Thrive London is running a variety of community and stakeholder engagement sessions to obtain more qualitative information on individual and community experience of COVID-19. So if you have engaged with Londoners on their experience of COVID-19, for example, through peer research or focus groups, then we'd love to hear from you. Please do get in touch with us at the email address below or visit our website for more resources and information. The question I want to put to you, and you can participate today by using the question and answer function and the chat function. The question I want to put to you as you hear from these fantastic practitioners is, how might we support mental health and resilience in your communities? And I'd really appreciate if you could keep that in mind and we can return to this question as we close today's session. That's it from me for now. I'm going to hand over back to Jeeves. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Byron, for that overview of Thrive London. I checked out your website this week, and some of your resources that are tailored to helping individuals with their mental health and well-being really are fantastic. So I would urge everyone to check those out. Also, the podcast is something that definitely appeals to me as a young person. It's definitely a media format which I think is still underused. I don't know why people don't do it while they're whatever playing golf or maybe doing the washing. So definitely check that out, especially seeing how issues of social concern affect people's mental health. Also, please ponder, message to our audience, please ponder on the question that Byron has put in the chat section as you listen to our speakers address the issue of resilience and mental health. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a short video message from Maria Mahmood, who's the director of Muslim Youth Helpline, a charity that provides faith and culturally sensitive services to Muslim youth in the UK.
It is an absolute pleasure to be invited to an event with people from across the sector who value mental health discussions. Muslim Youth Helpline is a 19-year-old charity. We are a listening service helpline that provides free and confidential faith and culturally sensitive support services targeted at vulnerable young people in the United Kingdom. Mohammed Mamdani set up the Muslim Youth Helpline in 2001 to provide young British Muslims with advice and support that is sensitive to their culture and religion. Muhammad, who was only 18 at the time, felt that there was very little support for the young Muslim community. He got together with a couple of friends at college and they ran the helpline from Muhammad's bedroom for a few hours each week. The phone line was based on a counselling model, with young people counselling each other and providing emotional support and signposting to other sources of help. It grew from there. We've come a long way since then. Some things have changed, others have stayed the same. We stay true to the values which he instilled, confidential and non-judgmental. We are open 6 hours a day, every single day. On every shift, we have a helpline officer who is a paid member of staff and a trained counsellor. People can contact us by phone, email or web chat. What's interesting is that a youth helpline was started by a young person that saw and felt the gap of available resources. We are huge on data. Data helps us for training purposes. It helps us understand what our callers need and therefore what we need to do. Since lockdown, we have seen our inquiries more than doubling, with a 313% increase in calls. We are consistently getting and missing more inquiries due to COVID-19 and bereavement related to it. Many callers felt anxiety and depression due to staying at home, unstable family situations, and losing jobs and opportunities. Since April, our primary concerns have been faith and spirituality, family issues, suicidal thoughts, depression, and anxiety. One night, half of our calls centered around suicidal feelings. Even in July, our calls still center around family issues and faith and spirituality. Many callers are still feeling the effects of quarantine at home and are looking for a way to deal with these COVID-related issues. How have MYH supported their communities during lockdown? Our helpline officers have literally opened up their homes and living rooms to take calls from their bedrooms to provide emotional support to those in need. We have put out content via vlogs for our community. We've collaborated with organisations to diversify our audience and ensure we are reaching as many of the community as possible. We've increased the number of officers on shift to ensure we are taking as many calls as possible. What can we do moving forward to support the mental health and well-being of those we serve? Get to know the community you are serving through socials, through community support days, craft making. They are more likely to open up if they know you and know that they can trust you. Listen with an open mind and open heart. They are trusting you with the most difficult moments of their lives. Try not to rush the conversations or rush to fix things. Sometimes, just listening and trying to understand can do a world of good, especially if this is the first time they're opening up. Educate people with responsibilities such as imams and parents on what mental health is, what to look out for, and how they can support their children if they're struggling. Talk about your own mental struggles and mental health in general more openly with young children. Know that there is a role for faith to play, that our callers are conflicted, and they do ask to be signposted to faith-based organisations. I'm going to explore 2 case studies that we had during lockdown. These are not their real names. Layla has been struggling with mental health. She feels her parents often say things that trigger her anxiety and make her feel low. She knows her parents mean well, but she's unable to take their words in a positive manner. Instead, her anxiety causes her to believe their words are quite negative. We spoke about her anxious thoughts and how to address them with mental health services in her area. She expressed that while she does currently have phone therapy, she is more comfortable with MYH as she can share cultural issues with an organisation. She thanked us for being there for young Muslims like herself who struggle with mental health. She felt grateful that organisations like MYH exist, as she feels mental health and anxiety are not really spoken about in her culture and amongst some Muslims. Sarah has recently been through an abortion and now suffers with an overwhelming amount of guilt surrounding her decision. She feels regret about her decision and anger towards people she felt forced her to make those decisions through religion. She's struggling with forgiving herself and gaining support from her family. Sarah let us know she is grateful for MYH as it gives her a platform to talk about her religion out loud without feeling judged. She mentioned it made a huge difference and allows her to explore new possibilities. Sarah says she wouldn't be here if it wasn't for MYH. I was thinking about the word thrive, and it made me smile, because anyone that works in the sector, anyone that has hard mental health days, knows that your mental health can challenge so many areas of your life. And if you take care of your mental health, you can thrive in so many parts of your life. The connections are deep. So let's continue to make mental health on the agenda and support organisations, especially faith-based ones, to help those that need support. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, for that interesting talk. Having services that are tailored to young people is so important. I've seen my close friends suffer from mental health due to the pressures of cultural demands, whether that be academic success or domestic issues, these being getting married at a certain age. I also love how Muslim Youth Helpline was founded with a will and a group of friends determined to give support to one another. Also, just to add another issue that you touched upon, it is so important to educate our faith leaders on how they can support their congregants with their own domestic abuse. Our next guest, Andrew Whitaker, is the London regional leader at Christians Against Poverty, a Christian charity specialising in support for those in financial difficulty. Before he begins his talk, we have a video from Christians Against Poverty. Over to the video.
Hi there, my name is John Kirkby. I'm the founder of Christians Against Poverty. I hope that you enjoy the tour of our offices here in Bradford, Jubilee Mill and Jubilee Centre. Enjoy the tour. Welcome to Jubilee Mill, the home of Christians Against Poverty. In 1999, when Kat was just 3 years old, we bought this building as a statement of faith that God could do more with us than we could possibly imagine. At the time, there was just 20 of us stood right here looking at this beautiful old Yorkshire building at the heart of Bradford. We have 3 floors of staff dedicated to serving people caught up in the miserable grip of poverty right here in the UK. In 2006, the work of Christians Against Poverty had expanded so much that we couldn't believe it. Jubilee Mill was becoming full. And just as we'd reached that point, an old Roman Catholic primary school just over the road came onto the market and we snapped it up. Officially, this is our Jubilee Centre, but around here we call it our debt-free factory. This is where over 23,000 people a year have their lives transformed by our debt advice service. It's where thousands of people each year reach that incredible moment of becoming debt-free. That's 11 every working day. Families sat around their kitchen tables like I did all those years ago, knowing that it was over, that they owed no one any more money. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but I can tell you it's quite simply one of the most incredible feelings to know that you are debt-free, and that's happening in thousands of lives every year through our amazing work here in the UK. Whenever someone goes debt-free or finds work or takes a step to overcome addictions or completes a life skill course, we celebrate. Harmonicas are blown, Mexican waves are run the length of the offices. We believe in cheering on and celebrating every one of our clients who reaches these amazing milestones in their journey to find freedom from poverty. Whatever your involvement with Christians Against Poverty is, whether you are already a supporter or maybe you run a service, perhaps you prayed for us, thank you. I hope this short tour has encouraged you that in partnership with the local church we are able to see lives radically transformed from poverty to hope.
Thank you, Byron and Jeeves, for this opportunity. And it's been amazing in these times that are so tough and so challenging to see what faith organisations have been doing to support the most vulnerable and those in absolute dire situations. To hear and come across the figures that are going on is mind blowing. So exciting to see what's going on. Here at Christians Against Poverty, we are known for our debt support, and generally historically that's a face-to-face service where we are in people's homes and we are offering a service that is very tailored to that person in front of us. But we also get the opportunity to find out what else is going on in somebody's life, and where we're able to offer a lot more of the emotional support. We're able to see the heating's not on, the lighting's not on, and able to bring in other services so that we can really offer a very holistic service. So our core debt service we've managed to move over the phone and online, so that we now are able to service and look after many of our clients over the phone. What that has meant is that we aren't necessarily able to offer such a holistic service. But what's been amazing is that those conversations have really opened up, and people have really opened up about their struggles. And back in May, we did a survey across the London region, and out of over the 50 churches that we partner with across London, we had 24 responses. And those churches had 500 volunteers actively out there, 2,000 man hours a week, supporting 500 households across London per week. 83% of those churches said the greatest need that they were facing was mental and emotional support. that stress that people were going through was causing so big a challenge. The second was food and medical supplies. So our frontline staff were very, very proactive to get out there and meet the very practical need of food and medical supplies, in finding support agencies and collaborating with other local organisations to make sure we were able to get that food parcel to somebody's door, make sure we were able to get those medical supplies to somebody, and generally being able to offer a more holistic service. So we developed a product especially for the season called Kickstart, which is available to local churches to partner with us and to run. And it's a course that they can pick and choose what material that they think is most suited to the needs in their local community. And that could be around mental health, that could be around anxiety, that could be around more practical needs of how to provide for your family's circumstances in that season, for the stress on the children and so on. So there's a breakdown of courses and material that's available. And what's been interesting is that the most vulnerable and the most isolated have been seeking for community. They've been seeking an opportunity to get together with others and just create and have that sense that I am with somebody else cares, and somebody else is going to listen to me and hear what I've got to say, and feel like they have a voice and that they are important. And just that sense of community has really, the stories we've heard back, has really made an impact in their lives. We have got one church that we partner with that launched a Cap Money course, and they were very reticent. How do we do this in this season? That is, everyone's at home. Are they going to turn up for a Cap Money course, three sessions where they commit to turning up to the group environment and learn about basic money management? This church thought, let's do it. They had 15 people in their local community who they had no clue who they were log in to register. And it just created this little community. And at the end of the 3-week session, the 3 sessions, they didn't want to stop. They wanted to find another opportunity to meet, because the greatest thing it was meeting was that vulnerable, that isolation, that sense of nobody's with me in this season, especially amongst the most poor in our UK, in our city. The lengths people have gone to has just been absolutely amazing to see the collaboration, working with lots of other organisations and charities to fundamentally create community and create that sense of togetherness has been wonderful. We've also got job clubs. We've also got life skills and Fresh Start. These are all programs that the local church is offering that have created an online platform to support people who are generally the most vulnerable in and around London. Our details can be found online at capuk.org. You can get in contact with us there, and you'll be able to refer people to find out what we're all about and how we can best support those most vulnerable. We're about to lead into Jane's story, and Jane's story, although not COVID specific, really does tell and show the need that's out there and how best we can mobilize to meet people. And that's generally around somebody to listen who cares. It's going to make a difference. I'm going to hand over to Jane's story. Bless you. Thanks.
I wouldn't open my post. It just built up in the kitchen. And even to just look at that pile of post was a bit of a, sort of like, oh, you just knew what was in there. I was frightened of going to bed, because I knew once the lights went off, my brain would click into action, and all your worries, your fears. And I just think it's worse at night, because you can't really do anything, and you are alone with your thoughts, and sometimes they're a lot stronger than what you are. And that is scary. That is scary. I could sit up several nights and just knit throughout the night, and you wouldn't function the next day because you weren't really doing anything anyway, because you weren't really interested in life. And it does have a huge impact, because I couldn't even look in the mirror, or if I did, I'd say, Jane, where are you? Because it just wasn't me. Jane says I couldn't look at her for the first hour that she was at my house, and Well, I gave over all my posts and everything else, and we went through it and had a lot of my paperwork. And it was just such a relief, such a relief. I think by the time Jane left, I was an inch taller. Came back with my CAP plan. I knew I could do it. I just had that feeling. I said to my Daisy, I'm going to church this evening, and she offered to come with me, which was really nice. And I went along, and the welcome was amazing. It was just such a warm, friendly feeling. And for several weeks, I felt as though the sermon was just for me. I felt as though I was the only one in that room, and it was just for me. And I had to be there to listen to that. And then in December, I did phone Jane, my debt coach, and asked about this Jesus thing. And I did do a salvation prayer, and yeah, met with Jesus, and it's just been amazing. CAP life with Jane and with Jesus is amazing. Yeah, so. Oh, that's what CAP stands for me. Yeah, confidence and pride. Yeah, definitely. And that is something I can say with my hand on my heart. It really has given me back confidence and pride. Because I can look in the mirror now and actually say, yes, you're there, that's you, I know it's you. Do you know what I mean?
Thank you, Andrew, for your talk, and thank you to Jane. The figures speak for themselves, showing how big of an issue mental well-being is within all communities. But hearing stories of communities working together to come up with joint solutions really gives me hope. Our next guest speaker, Dr. Govindajit Uppal, she is a clinical psychologist at Seek Your Mind. Seek Your Mind is a volunteer-led charity that provides mental health support for people of all backgrounds, with an initial focus on supporting the Sikh community. Over to you.
Thank you, Jeevan, and thank you to Thrive London and everyone for inviting us here. So I'm really glad to be part of this. So so I am part of an organisation called Seek Your Mind. We're a volunteer-led charity that was established around 5 years ago, and our vision is to work in the community with the community to consider the impact of culture and religion in relation to mental health. We hope to empower the Sikh community to speak up about mental health difficulties and to support people to make informed decisions about their care. We offer guidance in navigating systems as well that unfortunately the current systems are not always set up to ensure access to minority communities like Sikh communities and many others as well. As Jeevan was saying, I am the clinical psychologist, and there are other mental health professionals in the team, but also, and more importantly, actually people with lived experience of mental health difficulties. We offer free and confidential support to anyone in the UK and have had requests worldwide as well, via telephone, via Zoom, and we facilitated workshops in many organisations, and we provide information both in English and in Punjabi. So today we wanted to talk about something that we've been doing over the pandemic during the lockdown. During this time, we've actually seen quite a number of research studies, surveys that have been sent out in the Sikh community to look at the impact of this time on the Sikh community. But one thing that we found that was missing was actually the connection with faith. There's so much research out there more generally highlighting how faith can have a positive impact on well-being and health. So when we started to look at our own community, we wanted to think about how did we cope during this time, and how do we cope specifically with the impact of Gurdwara, the Sikh places of worship, and them being closed during this time. So I will briefly talk about our preliminary findings, because actually our data collection has just stopped and the analysis is yet to occur. So we conducted focus group discussions across Zoom in July and August, and collected male and females over 18. There were a mixture of the Sikh community, and not more importantly, but including people who were head of Sikh organisations and Sikh Gurdwara. So they were actually, they have power and control over what Sikh Gurdwara can do for the community. So that was really, really helpful to have them part of the discussion. And what we found was that actually for many, it was an alien concept to not be able to go to the Gurdwara to pay their respects, to not be able to connect with their living guru, as this is something that's never happened before. And as most of you might know, the Sikh New Year actually happened during lockdown in April. So it came as quite a shock. But many were able to recognise that whilst they were unable to maybe undertake physical worship, they were able to connect with their faith in many other ways. And a theme that kept coming up was about the community drawing on their ancestral history and drawing on their gurus and learning from this. And in the Sikh scriptures, in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, there are concepts such as staying in Chardi Kala. And what that means is staying in a higher state of being, regardless of what is happening around us and in the world around us. And often in discussions, there were stories about our gurus that were shared to highlight that this is not the first time that we have faced adversity and that we are capable of getting through this. Other ways that people connected with their faith included online programs, telephone helplines, and serving the community, both Sikh and non-Sikh, by making and sharing food. I'm sure all of you have seen during this time that Sikh organisations that have been sharing food to various organisations across the UK. What we also found was that technology was amazing in being able to, just like today, was in being able to connect people in a way that it's never been used before. So we had WhatsApp groups, telephone buddy systems, Zoom discussions, and online live prayers. For most in the group discussions, they reflected on how it was a time for selfless service. We call that seva in Sikhi. So while recognising that actually they were able to be selfless in the service and their volunteering, they were actually in a really quite privileged position to be able to do this. And some teenagers and adolescents who would never normally have stepped into making any food in a gurdwara, let alone their own homes, they were actually coming in regularly and learning how to make food and then going out to share it with those who needed it. One of the biggest gurdwara in London actually mentioned that they shared about thousands of meals a day at one point during the pandemic. And what was really important was that when dropping off food parcels, volunteers reflected on how they were able to connect with the different generations in the community that, again, they normally wouldn't have spoken to in everyday life. There were other parts of the Sikh community in the UK that helped to make PPE, and this enabled many elderly individuals to feel part of something bigger, to know that they were helping even though they were shielding themselves. What these initiatives have showed is that their activities actually gave people a sense of purpose and a role during a really difficult and unprecedented time, and many actually did go on to learn new skills. Another discussion that came up was often when people come into a gurdwara, a Sikh place of worship, we don't know much about their lives apart from maybe when they're coming and what they do there. However, during the pandemic, people were able to find out more, particularly around the elderly generations who were, who would come and actually when looking at their home lives, they were alone, they had little support. So the food parcels that were dropped off were actually a bit of a conduit for daily conversations and support. There was one particular story that stood out to me, and I'm sure we're not the only organisation that have, noticed this, but those food parcels were so important that there was an elderly gentleman in particular who had actually fallen, and the only way that he had support really is because there was somebody coming to drop off a food parcel and look through the window and saw what had happened. So without these things, it's actually quite worrying knowing when they might have been supported. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is that making and sharing of food has led to so many things, including greater connection, conversations, and a real sense of community spirit. The pandemic has really led to getting to know the community again and recognising how capable the Sikh community and many others are in coming together to support and serve others. Overall, the participants in the group felt that this time has really enabled them to become closer to their faith. And this is coming from people who were already quite religious, but also people who'd never ever thought about religion as much as they did during this time. What we can learn from this is that dynamic and creative leadership is needed, especially in our places of worship, because the ones that had the widest reach actually had the more creative ways of serving the community that they lived in. One thing that's also very important is that these places of worship, not just Sikh Gurdwara, but other places are hubs in our community. And moving forward, we need to think about how we can work together. So we as a community can work together with the Gurdwara, but also statutory services to ensure that people's practical and emotional needs are met. And we need to consider all the work that we've done during this time. How can we make this sustainable? Because the need isn't going to go away. There are still people out there that will need this support. Greater awareness of intersectionality and privilege in our community were really evident during these conversations, and the need to advocate social justice and build on this. What I found really personally important as well was resilience, and we've talked a lot about that today, and how communities can draw on their history, their ancestral history, to find out, and learn from and be empowered from how their ancestors have coped. My take-home message is that social and community action can be an antidote to collective trauma, because that's what we've all been through. Faith and connectedness are two of the many forms of collective resilience that we have discussed today, and our ability to cope does come from our surroundings in part. It can lead to collective healing within a support system that shares our values. And so I think we need to drop the I and we need to look at the we, and that's the amazing stories that I've heard from other organisations during this talk too. So thank you.
I think that has been a wonderful theme across all of our speakers. The get rid of the I and concentrate on the we, on faith communities coming together. And I love a really important point there was also creating the correlation between faith and mental health is so important, and using food as a mechanism to bring people together. It's extremely powerful. Our final speaker, Dr. Rachel Rose Burrell, who's the psychotherapist and member of the Ruach City Church. She conducted research titled The Black Majority Church, Exploring the Impact of Faith and the Faith Community on Mental Health and Wellbeing. Unfortunately, couldn't be here with us today due to technical issues, but her segment and talk will be added onto the YouTube recording of this webinar. So make sure you tune into that to see her talk. I actually looked at her paper that I just read out this week, and if you do want to read it, it is publicly accessible, but just a bit of a disclaimer, it's 300 pages. So, but it's vital work, and I would encourage everyone to at least have a bit of a glimpse at that.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rachel Rose Burrell, and I'm a member of the leadership team at Ruach City Church. At Ruach City Church, we do a number of things to support our local community and our congregation. This includes our outreach program that involves work with the homeless, as well as our Konanoia food bank program. And throughout the COVID pandemic, our leaders have been contacting our vulnerable and isolated congregants on a regular basis. Today, however, I'm going to talk about Ruach Wellbeing Service, which launched last year. The next slide, please. The Ruach Wellbeing Service is a holistic service for partners, their families, and the wider community across London. We have 3 locations in London, in Brixton, Walthamstow, and Kilburn, and a 4th location in Birmingham. What I want to focus on today is how the well-being came about, and I'll go to the next slide and just talk a little bit about the background that led to the service. And this is a service that is born out of research, and the research that I conducted was the Black Majority Church and how faith and faith community impact on mental health and well-being. But before I got to that stage, there were a number of things that influenced this idea about looking into the Black Majority Church and mental health. It started many years ago with one incident whilst I was training as a nurse. I was doing a placement on a psychiatric ward, and when I went up to the ward, all the patients, well, 95% of the patients were black men who were highly medicated. When I was embarking on my therapy training, I was just baffled by the very limited time and attention that was given to diversity and difference. So I think it was a 2-hour course, a 2-hour session in a 2-year course. So I was very, very bemused about that. Other things that were important to me were the fact that the Pentecostal church, the Black majority church, is the fastest growing Christian, the fastest growing form of Christianity in the UK, and that the membership of Black majority churches is still increasing. And that these Black majority churches have been supporting our congregations, members who are experiencing health and mental health difficulties. They've been supporting individuals with these conditions for many, many decades, often without any financial support or additional resources from statutory services. But alongside that, individuals have highlighted that there is a lack of knowledge and understanding and resources with regard to supporting individuals with mental health difficulties. And as a result, this has left some people feeling mistreated as well as unsupported. There is a wider context to the study also, and this is the socio-political, economic issues that are very much in the public domain around Black Lives Matter, where Black people in this country are more likely to experience poverty, racism, discrimination, and inequalities in health, education, employment, housing, the criminal justice system, as well as within the mental health system, where Black people are more likely to be diagnosed as schizophrenic, to be sectioned, admitted to hospital, are more likely to experience poor outcome from treatment, to disengage from mainstream mental health services, are more likely to be treated with medication. And oftentimes they fail to progress in these services because they feel these services are not acceptable, accessible, or culturally appropriate and sensitive. And so as a result of my study and all of these things combined to explore what was going on within the church and how were they responding to mental health difficulties, the findings showed that within the church there was a lack of confidentiality and trust when sharing personal information. Individuals found there was a lack of skill and expertise on mental health generally within the church, that those seeking to help, including leaders, were unqualified, that problems around mental health tended to be spiritualized or medicalized or even demonized, and often leaders were unavailable or inaccessible to discuss issues around mental health. Generally, people found that church was unfriendly and unwelcoming if they were experiencing mental health difficulties. They didn't feel that they were listened to, and that generally there was a sense that the church was ignorant about mental health, that there needed to be a lot more information and upskilling. But if one of these Black Christians, for example, were to go outside and seek help from statutory services, equally they were faced with a range of challenges, including being suspicious of statutory services. They didn't feel that they really wanted to help, that there were this was mainly due to negative experiences and perceptions of the services. There seemed to be an emphasis on medication for treatment as opposed to talking and being referred to talking therapies. People felt if they started to talk about their faith or expressed their faith, they were often pathologized. There was a lack of understanding and cultural sensitivity, they felt. People felt unable to speak freely about their faith. Individuals say they experienced racism and discrimination, didn't feel they were listened to, and felt there was a sense of arrogance about dealing with these services. So as a result of that, this is how the Wellbeing Service came about. Following that research, I felt it was really important to put my knowledge into action and develop a service that really was about developing a culture of acceptance and openness and destigmatizing mental health problems rather than spiritualizing, demonizing and pathologizing them, and really wanting to create something where people felt respected and felt that they were treated with kindness and that they felt welcomed. So the wellbeing service is made up of volunteers and volunteers who are qualified counsellors and psychotherapists. They're mental health workers, they are trainers, community liaison workers, clinical supervisors, creative practitioners, complementary therapists, health and fitness practitioners, and medical professionals. The service includes individual counselling, group therapy, trauma healing groups, clinical supervision, facilitated workshops and training. The service is very clear. It is not all things to all men, and we acknowledge our limitations. We are not replacing statutory services, GP practices or the NHS. What we want to do is offer an alternative or a starting point where people can come to us and we can offer them support and appropriate signposting and of course support and help where necessary or where appropriate. So there are 7 sections within the mental health, 7 sections within the wellbeing service: administration and hospitality, therapies, and these include psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, creative therapies, which include drama, poetry, dance, jewelry making, glass work, complementary therapy, massage and stress reduction treatments, or a whole range of creative therapies. And all our practitioners are qualified. Within the psychiatric support section, we offer support, signposting, information, advocacy and education. The pastoral care section is more in-house and includes a range of supportive and educational programs for our RUAC leaders. The training involves mental health awareness training, education, information through presentations, workshops, both formal and informal, group facilitation and sharing personal experiences. And the sharing of personal experiences are actually really important because sometimes they can be more powerful and effective than the formal training. Community, I think, is very pertinent for what we're doing today, and this involves liaising with local organisations, developing referral pathways and partnerships, and sharing resources. And so we are very keen to develop this area because we are very aware that we cannot work in isolation. Interdepartmental links is really concerned with working alongside all the RUAC departments and all the ministries to ensure that we are supportive, but also that we provide training, particularly around mental health. The service has some core values. We want to operate in excellence and professionalism, provide relevant information and things that are relevant to individuals. We are very keen to signpost appropriately, and so are always looking for new services or existing services within the community that will help with this. We want to operate with respect and courtesy toward everyone who uses the service and also within our team. And we particularly want to be holistic and culturally sensitive. And that's a really key, important part of how we approach our work. And this fits in with RUAC's wider values, which is aiming for excellence, working together, acting with integrity, respecting each other, and empowering our team. So as mentioned before, some of the other services that we do is the trauma healing group. We recognise that people have experienced all sorts of trauma, particularly Black people and people who have come from different countries. And so these groups are specifically for leaders as well as specific groups for members of the congregation. The RUAC Bereavement Support Group is designed to support the RUAC partners or members and their families. And of course, we are aware that Black people or people from the BAME community have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. And this has been a really invaluable resource to the church and our congregation. In addition, we have introduced a children and young people support service, and we're working alongside our youth leaders just to help the young people. And again, in light of the GCSEs and A-level results that caused a lot of stress and distress, we've been working alongside our leaders with regard to issues along those lines, as well as mental health. We've been supporting our elders when we were able to meet face to face and in our church communities. So if there is an incident that involved mental health distress, then our wellbeing practitioners would work alongside our leaders to try and address and support the individual and ensure that they get the right support. And this is during our Sunday services. We provide clinical supervision to our leadership, and this is in direct response to the COVID situation, and this is to ensure that our leaders are also looking after themselves and feeling that they are supported. Obviously, the demands through the COVID period have spiked, and there's a huge pull on resources and time. So this is just our way of ensuring that they are being taken care of. The Church-Based Therapy Forum is a forum that I set up that invites heads of services who provide counselling within their churches or deliver counselling from a church location. And we come together on a quarterly basis to share our resources, good practice, as well as just to be supportive of each other. And so we are always looking for individuals to join and to share with us. So I hope someone out there will get in touch. Of course, in response to COVID-19, all our counselling support went online and via telephone, and those I think quadrupled in number. And again, our practitioners have been working 6 days a week, morning and evening, to support those individuals who have referred themselves for support. We've introduced managing death and dying training for our leaders, just to give them the confidence in dealing with this area, as well as putting a huge amount of information on our RUAC website around diet, exercise, mental health, creative therapy, psychoeducation, tips and techniques for coping under lockdown. And we are in the process of also setting up a parent support group as the young people return to work. We have also put information around money management. And again, as mentioned in a previous talk, we will be doing our best to support individuals around money management, and hope to be doing some training in that area as well. So this has been a very brief introduction into the RUAC Wellbeing Service, and please do feel free to get in touch if you would like more information. Thank you very much.
Just to put our speakers on the spot, because we do have a bit of time left, to ask a quick question. How can we, because I feel like it's the hardest thing to get people to speak about their own mental health. How can we, as organisations, as individuals even, communicating with our brothers, sisters, or even our neighbours, how can we encourage them to open up and talk about their own mental health?
I think that's a great question, Stephen. I think for me personally and professionally, it's about normalising these discussions, that actually if we can create a narrative in our families, absolutely, and generationally, then it's a known quantity, isn't it? Because it's the untangible, it's the mental health. You know, what does it mean? Everybody has mental health difficulties. This statistic of 1 in 4 doesn't make any sense, because actually 4 in 4 have mental health. And everyone in their lives will experience mental health issues at one point, because life is hard. And for us at Seek Your Mind, the way we kind of try and bridge that gap sometimes is talking about faith. So when faith is important to a person, we bring in how faith, our scriptures, talks about mental health. And so it's kind of a shared way to have that conversation, rather than it being quite jarring and a kind of a Western kind of concept. It's been around since man was around.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I also love how when Maria was giving her talk and she was talking about the cultural demands that are sometimes put on individuals and can affect their mental health. When you have someone who's going through those same cultural demands, is communicating with you, and it's just more relatable and personal. That's always helpful. What about yourself, Andrew?
I would say day to day, at a really simple practical level, just having a smile on your face. When you're out and about on the street, you're coming across people, you'd never know what people are going through. And if you just have an open disposition, just a smile. I've had somebody come up to me and say, can I, just a complete stranger, can I talk to you? Because they just felt there was something warm and open that they could share. And I think the second point, which has already been raised, is just vulnerability yourself. Being able to make yourself vulnerable so that you lead with vulnerability. And when we set that context, people will naturally open up, because as has already been shared, the context we have is let's be open, let's be honest. This is a common issue. It's not a taboo topic. And we need to lead by showing that vulnerability.
I couldn't agree more. I also think Gobindajit referred to it a little bit in her talk as well, when she spoke about this is a common issue between all faith communities, and when we come together as faith communities, I mentioned it a bit in my introduction, that's when great things can happen. That's when we can create, like I said, the most inclusive and effective solutions to issues such as addressing our own mental well-being. So I'd like to say thank you to our speakers for today, all of our guest speakers, and of course yourselves at home for tuning into the webinar. I hope we fulfilled our objectives that I mentioned at the start of the event. But most importantly, I hope we can leave you with some positivity. We dropped a question in the chat function before at the start of the webinar, this being how might we support mental health and resilience in your communities. We urge you to think about this question further and get in touch with the partner organisations on this webinar with your feedback on this question and anything else mentioned earlier on in the event. Just to add, I hope we have done justice to faith communities, organisations and individual places of worship that have done and are doing amazing work to support those affected by COVID-19. To leave you with a short personal perspective, when asked why I devoted my years following graduation to working with faith communities, I'm not short of amazing stories that I can tell, outlining the generosity, love and care that I've been shown, first as a stranger and then as a friend. It's been a real honour to be chair of this webinar today. Thank you to everyone again, our speakers, attendees and organisers behind the scenes. Have an amazing day and keep spreading the positivity. Thank you.